What does she bring NBC News? And when we make deals like this, and I've been at this company a long time, you're doing it for access to audience. Sometimes it's access to an individual, and we can have a journalistic ethics debate about that. And I'm willing to have that debate.
I'm pretty sure he just said that he's willing to have a conversation about the journalistic ethics involved here. Now, there's a lot of paths we can go down here, Chuck. So yesterday on Meet the Press, they're still doing that thing, by the way, apparently. Meet the Press. Yeah, it's still a thing. Who knew? Who knew? Kristen Welker is the host there, and she delivered an extraordinary opening segment explaining to her audience, apologizing to her audience, not just about a guest that she had booked, but the fact that that guest is now actually on the NBC News payroll. We're talking about former chairwoman Ronna McDaniel. And this was the beginning of an extraordinary sequence of events on Meet the Press that we're going to show for you because I know you don't watch it, but you need to see this.
I'll be joined by former RNC chair Ronna McDaniel in her first interview since stepping down as party chair. In full disclosure to our viewers, this interview was scheduled weeks before it was announced that McDaniel would become a paid NBC News contributor. This will be a news interview, and I was not involved in her hiring. This week, we learned just how much Trump's grip on the Republican Party is impacting the GOP's bottom line.
I love the transition there, too. It was gorgeous cinematography there with the dramatic swoop and zoom. I was not involved in her hiring, and this will be a news interview, just so you know. Now to my complete and total unbiased, fact-based news reporting. Trump has a grip on the Republican Party. And it goes on. Yeah, so Ronna McDaniel leaves the RNC and goes to work for NBC News as a contributor, as a person to bring on and lend her expertise to the Meet the Press panel or on all the news shows on MSNBC and I guess on election night or NBC News Nightly or whatever. After the interview, Kristen Welker's predecessor, Chuck Todd, comes onto the table to denounce the executives at NBC News for hiring this woman in the first place.
Let me deal with the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
I think our bosses owe you an apology for putting you in this situation because I don't know what to believe. She is now a paid contributor by NBC News. Well, I have no idea whether any answer she gave to you was because she didn't want to mess up her contract. She wants us to believe that she was speaking for the RNC when the RNC was paying for her. So she has credibility issues that she still has to deal with.
Yeah.
Is she speaking for herself or is she speaking on behalf of who's paying her? Once at the RNC, she did say that, hey, I'm speaking for the party. I get that. That's part of the job. So what about here? I will say this. I think your interview did a good job of exposing, I think, many of the contradictions. And look, there's a reason why there's a lot of journalists at NBC News uncomfortable with this because many of our professional dealings with the RNC over the last 6 years have been met with gaslighting, have been met with character assassination. So that's where you begin here. And so when NBC made the decision to give her NBC News' credibility, you got to ask yourself, what does she bring NBC News? And when we make deals like this, and I've been at this company a long time, you're doing it for access to audience. Sometimes it's access to an individual, and we can have a journalistic ethics debate about that. And I'm willing to have that debate. And if you told me we were hiring her as a technical advisor to the Republican convention, I think that would be certainly defensible. If you told me we're talking to her, but let's see how she does in some interviews and maybe vet her with actual journalists inside the network, see if it's a two-way, what she can bring the network. So I do think, unfortunately, this interview is always going to be looked through the prism of who is she speaking for?
Now, we'll get back to Chuck in a minute, but I'm pretty sure he just said that he's willing to have a conversation about the journalistic ethics involved here. Now, there's a lot of paths we can go down here, Chuck, with regard to the journalistic ethics involved in your career, because we could spend the next, 8, 9, 10 hours filling this program with you pushing the Russian collusion hoax, on your viewers? The lies about the Steele dossier? How about the lies about the effectiveness of the vaccine, the COVID shot that you were forcing on American people and publicly shaming them every day if they didn't get the shot, or anything else related to COVID-19? Oh, wait a minute. Let's do that big segment you did. Chuck, could you roll the segment out that you did on the Hunter Biden laptop story and how 51 intelligence agents said that it was Russian disinformation, so it shouldn't be talked about? Yeah, we could talk about that too, couldn't we? And it goes on and on and on. The journalistic ethics involved in Chuck Todd's oversight of NBC News out of the Washington, D.C. Bureau is absolutely stunning and beautiful. But you know what? Let's not go there, Chuck, because like I said, it's hours of coverage, just hours. You know what? Instead, let's turn to another one of your colleagues who not only is a contributor to NBC News, but she's got her own show over on MSNBC. Her name is Jen Psaki. Now, maybe you remember Jen Psaki's name. Chuck, help me out here because you're the master of journalistic ethics, right? Chuck, Jen Psaki, before she got the job at NBC News, didn't she stand up at the podium at Joe Biden's White House on a daily basis and lie to the American people? Chuck, I know, was very concerned about Ronna McDaniel and whether she was gaslighting the professionals at NBC News. They've got professionals over there at NBC News. That she was gaslighting them, right, Chuck? Is that the word you use? Gaslighting them about Trump and about Republicans and elections and policies. Jen Psaki, not working for a political committee, mind you, but working for the White House, getting a tax dollar paycheck, stood at the podium of the White House speaking on behalf of the U.S. government, and she lied about Hunter Biden and the crimes that he committed and what Joe Biden knew about it. Lied about Hunter Biden's art sales. Remember, this is going to get a full ethics review on this. Don't worry about that. Lied about whether the border was closed. Oh, absolutely. The border is secure, Jen Psaki told us time and time again. Jen Psaki lied about the Biden administration's censorship. Oh, Mr. Journalistic Ethics and champion of the First Amendment, Chuck Todd, can we get your colleague Jen Psaki on to tell us about the fact that she and her White House colluded with social media companies to censor and delete accounts because people dared to have a second opinion? I'm talking about doctors, literal doctors from Yale, from Stanford, who said this keeping schools closed during COVID is bull. That's not doing anything. It's just harming kids. This lockdown is not only killing our economy, but it's keeping people from going and getting cancer screenings. More people will die because of this. More people will die because of the vaccine mandates. Oh, and by the way, the mandated shot doesn't actually do what the government is telling us to do. Jen Psaki and her White House was involved in the censorship of all of that on social media, pressuring other journalists to not cover those stories, and then lied about it from the podium. And Chuck, she's right down the hall from you right now, dude. You're worried about a woman who ran a political committee for spinning things? Look at that smile on your face. I'm more than willing to have the conversation about the journalistic ethics here. You're right, though. That's not fair. Let's not talk to Jen Psaki. How about we talk to Simone Sanders, who just recently worked for Kamala Harris in the vice president's communication shop. And before that, during the campaign, she was the spokesperson for Bernie Sanders. But now she works as a paid journalist for NBC News. Oh, wait a minute. Did I mention Bernie Sanders? Because Chuck, back to you, Chuck. This is actually about you, or more specifically, about your wife. Did you know that Chuck Todd's wife was actually a top paid political strategist for Bernie Sanders? Now I know why you're smiling, Chuck. Well, look at you, you dog. Bernie Sanders, well, we know about those Bernie Sanders girls, right? Hey, remember that really great interview that Chuck Todd had with Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota? She ran for president back in 2020. Do you remember it? Oh, sure. Chuck had all of the political candidates on, but he definitely had Amy Klobuchar on. Why? Well, because Amy Klobuchar is actually Chuck Todd's tenant. Sure, Chuck, why didn't you reveal that? Chuck Todd owns a townhouse in Arlington, Virginia, that he rents out to Senator Amy Klobuchar. And then, whoop, there she is on the show. That's pretty cool. I wonder if she asked for a break on the rent, or I wonder if you charged more that month. Journalistic ethics. All the journalistic ethics going on over there. I'd say that Meet the Press is really a sad shell of what it used to be, because you'll hear people all day long today on cable news and radio and stuff. Oh, Tim Russert is rolling over in his grave. Tim Russert is rolling over in his grave. Tim Russert was a political advisor for then Governor Mario Cuomo. Yeah, the father of Andrew Cuomo and Chris Cuomo. This is nothing new. Let's ask Jake Tapper about it. Oh, Jake Tapper also worked for a Democrat congressman. And so did Chuck. Chuck Todd worked for a Democrat. This is all complete and total asinine hypocrisy. It's what my mentor, Andrew Breitbart, right there, used to call the Democrat media complex, the revolving door. You work in the media today, you work in the White House tomorrow. You work on Capitol Hill for a Democrat today, you work on cable news tomorrow. But, you know, once they get the job doing journalistic ethics, there's a firewall there. None of it influences anything, right? Right, George Stephanopoulos? And so there's one person makes their way onto a network show, Ronna McDaniel. We'll get to her in a minute, because the fact that they're losing their mind over her, of all people. One person makes her way onto television, and they all go completely insane. Speaking of insane, you know, these two had to chime in about it. You know, these two had to make the story about themselves. You know, I don't want to be mean. Actually, I think I do want to be mean. What's going on with Mika Brzezinski? You remember how everyone was like, that's not really Kate Middleton. That's not really Kate Middleton. What's going on? This is a camera trick. They've got a body double. I think we found Kate Middleton is on set with Joe Scarborough wearing a Mika Brzezinski mask. Or, if I may, Prince Harry is on the set wearing a Mika Brzezinski. What's going on with her? There's kind of a trans vibe going on there. Am I wrong? That looks like a dude dressed up like Mika Brzezinski. A dude in drag going as Mika Brzezinski for Halloween. All right. Remember what I said? I didn't want to be mean. Fake news. All right. Let's hear what their reaction was this morning.
Let's talk about the hiring of former RNC chair Ronna McDaniel.
Well, she was on Sunday's Meet the Press. It was her first appearance since NBC News hired her as a political analyst. I know you won't be surprised to know that we've been inundated with calls this weekend, as have most people connected with this network, about NBC's decision to hire her. We learned about the hiring when we read about it in the press on Friday. We weren't asked our opinion of the hiring, but if we were, we would have strongly objected to it for several reasons, including, but not limited to, as lawyers might say, Ms. McDaniel's role in Donald Trump's fake elector scheme and her pressuring election officials to not certify election results while Donald Trump was on the phone.
To be clear, we believe NBC News should seek out conservative Republican voices to.
Sure you do. Honestly, I forgot how funny this show is. To be clear, we think NBC, really, so they think NBC News should seek out conservative Republican voices. Well, you know, it's funny. If they had their own show every day, they could roll out the red carpet and they could populate the set with conservative Republican voices, couldn't they? Oh, wait, they do have their own show. The only conservative Republican voice allowed on that show is somebody to the left of Joe Scarborough, which is saying something considering he's growing out a Karl Marx beard next week. We think NBC News should hire many conservative Republican voices. Now let's turn to analysis with Reverend Al Sharpton. Absolutely unwatchable. By the way, NBC News, talk about the lunatics running the asylum. First, you hire this person. God knows how much money they gave Ronna McDaniel. Her first booking on Meet the Press, it's anarchy. They have a temper tantrum on the air and call out the exec. They should have never hired her. They should have never put you in this place to have to interview her. And then this breaks from Daily Mail. MSNBC won't book her. MSNBC is not going to book her for any of the shows on their network. So you're NBC News, you hire this person, and now she gets completely, if I were her, I wouldn't go on Meet the Press after that display, right? So what she get, whatever money you paid for her, you probably expect her to, well, she'll be a regular on Morning Joe, she'll be on Lawrence O'Donnell's show, maybe she'll hang out with, somebody midday on MSNBC, and then, once a month she'll do Meet the Press, and then she'll be with us for the convention and the election night. Now, all you got is convention and election night, if that. Which brings us to Ronna McDaniel. Because lost in all of this is her actual appearance on Meet the Press. I mean, what did she say? And you'll be happy to know that it's exactly confirmation of who you've always known Ronna McDaniel to be.
Let's dive right into this and start with your decision to step down as RNC chair. If you can, take me behind the scenes a little bit. Were you pushed out of your role?
Well, there's no question that as RNC chair, you have to remain neutral. And we had a primary process. And so we did have debates, right? We had debates and there was tension and a little friction that started during that process. It was well played out in the media. And I knew at that point when I was doing that role and we were going to have debates that when the nominee came forward and it was likely to be President Trump, that they would want to switch. And that's his right as nominee.
And so were you pushed out by him?
He absolutely wanted me to move aside and wanted Michael Whatley and Lara Trump to come.
Hey, speaking of debates, we had debates. Hey, Kevin, a disembodied voice of the producer of this show. Kevin, you there?
Yes, sir.
We saw Ronna McDaniel at the debate down in Miami, didn't we?
We absolutely did. We chatted with her.
We did a live stream from the spin room there, and she revealed on the air, completely unprovoked, that she had no contribution to the unsuccessful Virginia election last November. It was the day after the election, if I remember right. And she claimed that Glenn Youngkin and the Republican Party of Virginia said they didn't want any money from the RNC. And of course, that was denied, right? That all happened then?
Yeah, that was strange, wasn't it?
Yeah, sure was. Sort of the beginning of the end in this last string for her. But help me out here. That debate down in Miami, that was the one where Vivek Ramaswamy called her out from the stage, wasn't it?
That's correct.
Yeah. What network was that debate on?
You know, I'm going to have to go ahead and say it was ABC.
I'm sorry, Kevin. I hate to do this to you. It was NBC News.
Oh, excuse me.
Same network that employed her.
You know, I remember Kristen Welker was the moderator.
That's right. There she is. Kristen Welker was the moderator. In fact, it really elevated Kristen Welker's stature by being able to be the moderator of that debate that Ronna McDaniel was responsible for, that was in charge of, right? I wonder if there were any conversations between these two bastions and champions of journalistic ethics. I wonder if they had any conversation that night at the debate about Ronna McDaniel's future plans. I wonder if anybody from NBC News spoke with Ronna McDaniel that night when she was still chairwoman of the RNC about whether she might fit in with NBC News and her new pal there, Kristen Welker. It's curious, isn't it?
It's hilarious because I distinctly remember that both of these women were prime targets for Vivek Ramaswamy from the debate stage.
Vivek went after both of them, and they had that in common. Maybe they bonded over it.
Yeah.
Now there they are working together. But it's all about the journalistic ethics, Kevin. Disembodied voice, Kevin. Thank you, sir. Yeah, it's really something. Here's the bottom line here. Ronna McDaniel is a beltway political functionary. She was the chairperson of a political committee, a party, doesn't really do much. Can I prove to you how overblown the importance of Ronna McDaniel and this big reaction about Ronna McDaniel is from the media and the Democrats? I'm going to prove it to you. Can you name me the chair of the Democratic National Committee of the DNC? Do you know who it is? Do you have any idea who it is? Right? You have no idea who the chair of the DNC is. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Why? Because when you're the chair of the DNC, you don't have every single person in the mainstream media lined up to destroy you, like when you're the chair of the RNC. If they really cared about politics and they delivered news and information to the American people about everything going on in politics, then wouldn't they be talking to the DNC chair just as much as the RNC? And you couldn't even tell me who the DNC chair is. Ronna McDaniel is an inside the Beltway political functionary. She's not an ideologue. She's not a champion of basic conservative ideas and principles. She's not even an expert on how to win an election, clearly. This is how NBC News, Meet the Press, Chuck Todd, MSNBC, Morning Joe, and everybody over there at the Proud as a Peacock Network, this is how they react to Ronna McDaniel. Imagine, Joe Scarborough, we really think they should hire more conservative Republicans. Imagine hiring somebody that actually has an opinion, a strong opinion, who can effectively communicate that idea. Imagine how they would react. And we can imagine how they would react. We know exactly how they would react. And so do the executives at NBC News. That's why the one person they do hire is someone like Ronna McDaniel. And they still go nuts. And that's why you will never actually see anything coming to the close to equal time or equal voices expressing ideas that reflect what you believe and what you think and what your life is like and how you vote and what candidates you support. That's why. Because they don't care about you and they don't even care about their audience. They care about keeping their preening, self-important superstars at bay. And you just saw them flex a little bit of their muscle this weekend. But all of this translates into one very important lesson. If they get this upset about Ronna McDaniel and they can't handle having her voice among, 50 on that network, it tells you how isolated they are right now and how they can't even support their own positions with a modicum, with one voice who doesn't even express herself in any sort of principled conservative way, and they still shrink in terror and scream and have a temper tantrum. They're losing. And they're losing so bad that they can't even put up an argument or a fight against Ronna McDaniel. This is going to be a really fun 9 months ahead of us.